My family threw a surprise party for my brother's new baby, but never told me or my daughter. When we stopped by to drop off a gift, my mom sneered, "You don't belong here." My daughter just smiled, took my hand, and said loudly, "We know, that's why Dad's lawyer came with us." The room fell silent. Then the lawyer opened his briefcase and everything changed. Oh, the sting of being an outsider in your own family. It's a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone, and it's a pain I know all too well. I'm Heather, and at 34, I found myself standing on my parents' porch, the muffled sounds of laughter from inside twisting my stomach into knots. My own brother's baby shower, and I wasn't invited. My 16-year-old daughter, Lindsay, squeezed my hand as I clutched the carefully wrapped gift. When my mother opened the door, her smile vanished. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice like ice. That's when Lindsay, with a strange new confidence in her eyes, stepped forward. She smiled sweetly and said, "We know, Grandma. That's why Dad's lawyer came with us." The beginning of the divide. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in suburban Boston, the firstborn, the only focus for 3 years. Then Nathan arrived. From that moment, everything shifted. It was subtle at first, then painfully obvious as we grew older. For my 10th birthday, I got a practical set of school supplies and clothes I needed anyway. 2 months later, Nathan turned 7 and got a brand new bike, video games, and a weekend trip to Six Flags. This wasn't a one-off, it was the pattern of our childhood. "Nathan's just more sensitive," my mother would always say when I questioned the disparity. "He needs the extra attention." Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, without any of the privileges that should have come with that title. In high school, I pushed myself, maintaining a 3.9 GPA, joining the debate team, volunteering at the local hospital, anything to earn their approval. My parents attended exactly 2 of my debate competitions in 4 years, always citing work conflicts. Yet, they never missed a single one of Nathan's baseball games, even when it meant rearranging their schedules. The day I got my college acceptance letter to Boston University with a partial scholarship, I rushed home, bursting with excitement. My parents were in the kitchen, fawning over Nathan's C+ in algebra, a huge improvement for him, apparently. When I announced my news, my mother barely glanced up. "That's nice, honey. We'll talk about it later. We're celebrating Nathan's progress right now." We never did talk about it later. A new chapter, a new struggle. When I turned 18, the summer after graduation, I discovered I was pregnant. Marcus Williams, my boyfriend for 2 years, disappeared within a week. My parents' disappointment was palpable. "We expected more from you, Heather," my father said, his voice heavy with judgment. "You've always been so responsible." It was the first time they'd ever acknowledged that quality in me, and it came as a criticism. The strangest thing happened next. While my parents remained cold toward me, they somehow reconnected with Marcus. I found out he'd been visiting them, painting himself as overwhelmed but well-intentioned. They sympathized with him more than with me, their pregnant daughter. "He's just young and scared," my mother defended him. "You should give him time." I didn't have time. I had a baby coming and college plans to adjust. While other expectant mothers had baby showers and support, I had silence and disapproval. Lindsay was born in February, a beautiful 7-pound baby with her father's dark curls and my green eyes. My parents came to the hospital, but stayed only briefly. They held her awkwardly, as if she were evidence of my failure rather than their first grandchild. I deferred my college acceptance for a year, working 2 jobs while caring for Lindsay. My neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, a retired teacher, showed more genuine interest in my daughter than my own parents did. The following year, I enrolled in nursing school, attending classes while continuing to work part-time. Each day was exhausting, but Lindsay gave me purpose. I was determined she would never feel the sting of conditional love that had shaped my childhood. Nathan, meanwhile, dropped out of community college after 1 semester. "College isn't for everyone," my parents excused. He lived at home until he was 25, working various jobs that never lasted more than a few months. Still, he remained the golden child. The pattern deepens when Lindsay started school. She quickly revealed herself to be bright and perceptive. She noticed early on how differently her grandparents treated us compared to Uncle Nathan. "Why doesn't Grandma put my drawings on the refrigerator, like she does with the birthday cards Uncle Nathan gives her?" she asked me once. I had no good answer that wouldn't introduce bitterness into her young heart. "Some people just show love differently," I told her, though we both knew that wasn't the real issue. Despite everything, I kept trying to maintain a relationship with my family. I invited them to Lindsay's school performances, sent them photos of her achievements, and called regularly. I wanted Lindsay to have grandparents, even imperfect ones. But as the years passed, the pattern of favoritism only deepened, now extending to include my daughter in its painful shadow. By the time Lindsay turned 15, I had established myself as a nurse practitioner at Boston Medical Center. Those years of juggling work, school, and single motherhood had paid off professionally, even if my family relationships remained strained. I owned a small but comfortable two-bedroom apartment, had reliable childcare through trusted friends, and had created the stable home I'd always wanted for Lindsay. Lindsay had grown into a remarkably self-possessed teenager, with my academic drive but a confidence I'd never had. At 16, she was taking advanced placement classes and researching pre-law programs. "I want to help people who don't have anyone on their side," she told me once, a statement that felt both innocent and pointed. Nathan's life finally gained some direction when he met Rebecca Thompson at 28. Rebecca came from a wealthy family with connections that helped Nathan secure a position at her father's investment firm. Within a year, they were engaged, and my parents couldn't have been more thrilled. "Rebecca has been such a positive influence on Nathan," my mother gushed during one of our infrequent phone calls. "She's really helped him find his potential." I bit back the obvious response, that Nathan had been given every opportunity to find his potential for years, while I'd had to claw my way forward without support. Instead, I said, "That's wonderful. I'm happy for them." The wedding was an elaborate affair at a country club outside Boston. Lindsay and I received an invitation, though our names were misspelled. During the reception, my parents spent the evening introducing Rebecca's family to distant relatives and friends, but somehow never found the moment to introduce them to their only daughter and granddaughter. The final betrayal when Rebecca announced her pregnancy a year later, my parents' excitement reached new heights. My mother called me specifically to share the news, something she rarely did. "Nathan's going to be a father," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Can you believe it? We're finally going to be grandparents." The word stung like a physical slap. "Mom, you've been a grandparent for 16 years, I reminded her quietly. "Oh, you know what I mean," she dismissed. "This is different." And somehow, in her mind, it was. Despite the hurt, I genuinely tried to be supportive. I sent Rebecca a congratulatory text and offered any advice. Her response was polite but distant. "Thanks, but I've got a great obstetrician and my mom's been through this 3 times. Over the following months, my parents became even more elusive. My calls went to voicemail more often. When I reached them, conversations were brief and distracted. Twice I stopped by unannounced with cookies Lindsay had baked, only to find them hurrying me out the door with vague excuses. "They're hiding something," Lindsay observed. I shrugged it off. "They're probably just busy." "Grandpa's retired, Mom," Lindsay pointed out, and they were both in casual clothes, not dressed for any appointment. The suspicious behavior continued. Once, I distinctly heard my mother say, "It's just Heather, I'll get rid of her quickly," before returning to the phone with a bright, "Sorry about that, just organizing some papers." Another time, I overheard my father say, "Don't mention Saturday to her," before my mother shushed him. Lindsay became increasingly protective. During a family dinner my parents couldn't reasonably avoid, my father mentioned a new restaurant they'd tried last weekend. "That's strange," Lindsay said innocently. "Mom called you last weekend to see if you wanted to join us for lunch, but you said you were both sick with colds." The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken only by Nathan quickly changing the subject. The most revealing moment came when Lindsay was scrolling through Instagram and froze. "Mom," she said slowly, turning her phone toward me. On the screen was a photo posted by my cousin Amber, a family gathering at my parents' house from the previous Sunday, a day my mother had told me they'd be busy with church activities. The image showed my parents, Nathan, Rebecca, all my aunts and uncles, and various cousins gathered around a barbecue in my parents' backyard. The caption read, "Sunday fun with the fam. So excited for baby boy Davis coming soon. #FamilyTime, #BabyAndWay. Did you know about this?" Lindsay asked, her voice tight with hurt. I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. This wasn't a casual gathering. This was a planned family event to which every relative had been invited except us. Lindsay's face hardened. "This isn't right," she said. "Someone needs to say something." The next day, she called her grandparents directly. "Why weren't Mom and I invited to the family barbecue?" she asked without preamble. "Oh, Lindsay, it was just a last-minute thing," my mother fumbled. "Nothing formal." "Last minute with 20 people?" Lindsay challenged. "There's a hashtag and everything. Cousin Amber's post has the details all planned out." "Well, we thought your mother would be working, and teenagers don't usually enjoy those family things. Mom had Sunday off. You know that because she invited you for lunch, remember? The lunch you said you couldn't attend because of church." My mother sighed. "Lindsay, sometimes adults have complicated reasons for the things they do." "I'm old enough to recognize a lie," Lindsay interrupted, a steel in her voice I'd never heard before. "And I'm old enough to notice that you and Grandpa treat Mom differently than Uncle Nathan. Always have." She hung up before my mother could respond. I was torn between pride in my daughter's loyalty and anxiety about the confrontation. When my mother called me later to complain about Lindsay's disrespect, I found myself defending my daughter. She asked a fair question, Mom. "Why weren't we invited?" "It wasn't that kind of gathering," she insisted. "Not right for you. Not right for your daughter and granddaughter, but right for second cousins we see once a year? I pressed. The conversation ended with my mother claiming I was making mountains out of molehills and that I'd always been too sensitive. I tried to push the hurt aside, focusing on my work and Lindsay's college applications. But the pattern continued. Family events we discovered only through social media posts, celebrations we were never invited to, and a growing sense that the wall between us and the rest of the family was becoming insurmountable. The uninvited guest, I was organizing patient files at the clinic when my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Judith, my mother's sister. We weren't particularly close, but she'd always been kind to Lindsay and me. Looking forward to seeing you at Nathan's baby shower on Saturday. It's been too long, we can catch up then. I stared at the message, confusion turning quickly to hurt. There had been no invitation, no mention of any baby shower from my parents or Nathan. I checked my email and voicemail to make sure I hadn't somehow missed it. Nothing. I typed back, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't know anything about a baby shower on Saturday. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, oh dear. I assumed you knew. Your mother has been planning it for weeks. It's at their house at 2 p.m. Maybe your invitation got lost. My stomach twisted into a familiar knot. There was no lost invitation. This was deliberate exclusion. When I picked up Lindsay from her debate team practice, I was still distracted. What's wrong, Mom? Did something happen at work? I hesitated, not wanting to burden her, but we'd always been honest. Aunt Judith texted about Nathan's baby shower this Saturday. Neither of us were invited. Lindsay's face flushed with anger. Are you serious? They're throwing Uncle Nathan a baby shower and didn't invite us? That's beyond messed up. Maybe it's women only, I suggested weakly, knowing it wouldn't explain my exclusion. Then why wouldn't they invite you? You're his sister. And even if it was women only, what about me? I'm his niece. Lindsay's voice rose. This is ridiculous, Mom. They can't keep treating us like this. That evening, I called my mother directly, addressing the issue head-on. Mom, is there a baby shower for Nathan and Rebecca this Saturday? A pause. Who told you about that? Not a denial. Not an apology for the oversight. Just annoyance that I'd found out. Does it matter? Why wasn't I invited to my own brother's baby shower? It's just a small gathering, she said dismissively. Rebecca's mother organized it with me. Very intimate. Intimate enough for Aunt Judith to be invited from Rhode Island, but not intimate enough for your daughter and granddaughter who live 20 minutes away. Heather, please don't make this difficult. Rebecca wanted certain people there and, well, you two have never been close. And whose fault is that? I asked, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay calm. You've never given us the chance to be close. This isn't about you, my mother said firmly. This is Nathan and Rebecca's special time. Not everything revolves around your feelings. After hanging up, I sat on my bed, tears flowing freely. Lindsay found me there and sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. We should go anyway, she said suddenly. I looked up, wiping my eyes. What? We should go to the shower. Show up with a nice gift. Make them face what they're doing. Lindsay, we can't crash a party we weren't invited to. It's not crashing when it's family, she insisted. What are they going to do? Turn us away at the door in front of everyone? That would show exactly who they really are. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to take the high road, to be the bigger person, as I'd always tried to be. But another part, the part that had swallowed hurt after hurt for decades, wanted to stand up for once. Let's think about it, I said finally. The next day, I went shopping during my lunch break and selected a beautiful handmade wooden crib mobile for the baby, expensive, but tasteful. Something that showed genuine care despite our exclusion. I wrote a heartfelt card, expressing my excitement about becoming an aunt. By Saturday morning, I'd made my decision. We would go, briefly drop off the gift, and leave. No confrontation, no scene, just a gentle reminder that we existed and cared, despite everything. As we got ready, Lindsay was unusually quiet, focused on her phone. She excused herself to make a call, speaking in hushed tones from her bedroom. When she emerged, there was a determined set to her jaw that reminded me so much of myself at her age. Everything okay? I asked. Everything's fine, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just confirming something. The showdown we drove to my parents' house in relative silence. As we turned onto their street, I saw the cars lining both sides, Aunt Judith's SUV from Rhode Island, Uncle Robert's red pickup from New Hampshire, my cousin's vehicles from various parts of Massachusetts. Everyone had made the effort to attend. Everyone had been welcome. Except us. Lindsay squeezed my hand. Remember, Mom, we're just dropping off the gift. We don't need to stay where we're not wanted. As we approached the front door, I could hear laughter and conversation from inside, the unmistakable soundtrack of a family celebration. Lindsay carried the beautifully wrapped package while I tried to steady my breathing. I rang the doorbell and, for a moment, considered turning and running back to the car. But Lindsay stood firm beside me, and I found strength in her presence. When the door opened, I saw the exact moment my mother's expression shifted from hostess smile to shocked displeasure. Heather? Lindsay? What are you doing here? My mother stepped onto the porch and partially closed the door behind her, as if to shield the happy gathering inside from our unwelcome presence. Behind her, I caught glimpses of blue decorations and a banner reading, "It's a boy." "We brought a gift for Nathan and Rebecca's baby," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the thundering of my heart. Lindsay held up the package as evidence of our good intentions. My mother's eyes darted nervously to the gift, then back to my face. "You shouldn't have come. You weren't invited." The words, spoken so plainly, cut deeper than I'd expected. Even after years of subtle exclusion, hearing it stated so boldly took my breath away. "I'm aware we weren't invited, Mom. We just wanted to drop this off for the baby. We won't stay." "You don't belong here, Heather," she continued, her voice lowered but firm. "This is a special day for Nathan and Rebecca. Please don't make it about you." I felt tears threatening but blinked them back. "I'm not trying to make it about me. I'm trying to be a good sister and aunt, despite being deliberately excluded from a family event." By now, our conversation had drawn attention from inside. Faces appeared in the window, curious relatives trying to see what was happening on the porch. The front door opened wider and my father stepped out, looking uncomfortable. "Karen, what's going on?" he asked, then froze when he saw us. "Heather? Lindsay? This is unexpected." "We brought a gift for the baby," I repeated, my voice smaller now. Behind my father, Nathan appeared with Rebecca, her 7-month pregnant belly prominent beneath a blue maternity dress. Nathan's face registered surprise, then guilt, then a quick glance at our parents. "Heather, what are you doing here?" he asked, echoing our mother. "Apparently making a huge mistake," I said, the hurt finally breaking through my composed facade. "We just wanted to give you this, but it seems we're not welcome even for that." Rebecca looked confused, her hand protectively over her belly. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't you be welcome?" Before anyone could answer, more family members had gathered in the doorway and on the porch, creating an audience for our humiliation. Aunt Judith stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Heather, I'm so sorry. I thought you knew about the shower when I texted you." "Clearly I wasn't supposed to know," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. The silence that followed was deafening. No one spoke up to contradict me. No one, not my brother, not my father, not a single relative said, "Of course you should be here." Their silence confirmed what I'd always known but tried to deny. I was an outsider in my own family. I turned to leave, dignity in tatters, but determined not to break down in front of them. "Come on, Lindsay, let's go." But Lindsay didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward, her chin raised in defiance. "Actually, I think we should stay." My mother frowned. "Lindsay, this isn't appropriate. You need to leave with your mother." Lindsay smiled, a calm, confident smile that seemed beyond her 16 years. "We know we don't belong here, Grandma. That's why Dad's lawyer came with us." "Lawyer? What lawyer?" My father's voice rose sharply. As if on cue, a man in his 40s wearing a tailored suit approached from the street, where he'd apparently been waiting in a parked car. He carried a leather briefcase and wore an expression of professional detachment. "Good afternoon," he said, climbing the porch steps. "My name is James Winters, attorney at law. I represent Marcus Williams in matters concerning his daughter, Lindsay Williams Reynolds, and her mother, Heather Reynolds." My mother's face drained of color. "Marcus? What does he have to do with this?" I was equally confused. Marcus had been absent from our lives since before Lindsay was born. I turned to my daughter, questions forming on my lips, but she gave me a look that silently asked for trust. The lawyer continued, "I believe we should discuss this matter inside, unless you prefer to have this conversation in view of the entire neighborhood." My father hesitated, then grudgingly stepped aside. "Fine, but this is completely unnecessary and inappropriate." The truth unveiled as we entered the house, the festive atmosphere had evaporated. Relatives whispered among themselves, some looking embarrassed, others curious. The gifts piled on a table, the cake with "Welcome Baby Davis" written in blue frosting, the streamers and balloons, all served as evidence of the celebration we'd been deliberately excluded from. Nathan approached me, speaking low. "Heather, I didn't know you weren't invited. I assumed Mom had told you." I just looked at him, years of hurt making it impossible to accept this weak excuse. "You never checked? You never asked why your only sister wasn't at your baby shower? You never thought that was strange?" He had no answer. We gathered in my parents' living room, the baby shower guests awkwardly hovering between staying and leaving. Rebecca sat heavily on the couch, looking distressed, while Nathan stood protectively beside her. My parents remained standing, as did Lindsay and I, creating an unofficial division in the room. Mr. Winters placed his briefcase on the coffee table and addressed me directly. "Miss Reynolds, I understand this may come as a surprise to you. Your daughter contacted our office 2 weeks ago." I turned to Lindsay stunned. "You did what?" Lindsay took a deep breath. Mom, I've been in contact with Dad for almost 2 years now. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Marcus, the man who had abandoned us before Lindsay was even born, had been speaking with my daughter behind my back. He found me on Instagram, Lindsay continued. At first I ignored him, but eventually I agreed to meet him. He's changed, Mom. He wanted to make things right. Make things right? I repeated, my voice hollow. After 16 years? Miss Reynolds, the lawyer interjected, if I may explain the legal situation that brings us here today. My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. There is no legal situation here. This is a family gathering you're interrupting. I'm afraid there is indeed a legal matter, Mr. Winters replied calmly. He opened his briefcase and removed a folder. For the past 14 years, Mr. Williams has been sending child support payments for Lindsay. That's impossible, I said immediately. I've never received a dime from Marcus. Not directly to you, the lawyer clarified. Mr. Williams was young and irresponsible when Lindsay was born. He admits that freely. When he tried to make contact a few years later, he was told by your parents that you wanted nothing to do with him. My gaze snapped to my parents. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. They suggested that, to avoid upsetting you, he could send the support payments to them, and they would ensure the money was used for Lindsay's care. Mr. Williams agreed to this arrangement, believing it was what you wanted. The room seemed to tilt around me. Is this true? I asked my parents. My father cleared his throat. We were trying to protect you from further hurt. Marcus was unreliable. We didn't want him coming in and out of your lives. So you took his money instead? The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. For 14 years, Mr. Winters continued, Mr. Williams has records of every payment made, checks, bank transfers, and correspondence with your parents confirming receipt. The total amount over 14 years comes to approximately $97,000. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Almost $100,000 that should have helped raise Lindsay. Money that could have paid for childcare while I was in nursing school. Money that could have meant fewer overnight shifts and more time with my daughter. Money that could have gone toward her college fund. Around the room, relatives' expressions shifted from confusion to shock to disgust as they realized what my parents had done. We were going to tell you eventually, my mother said weakly. We were saving it for Lindsay's college. In an account in your names, Mr. Winters pointed out, with no legal obligation to use it for Lindsay's education. Nathan stepped away from Rebecca, his face pale. Mom? Dad? Is this true? You took money meant for Heather and Lindsay. We needed it more than they did, my father said defensively. Heather was doing fine on her own. She had her nursing job. We had retirements to think about, and your college tuition, Nathan. The words struck me like physical blows. My parents had used money meant for their struggling single-parent granddaughter to fund their retirement and Nathan's education. You paid for Nathan's college with money that was meant for my child? My voice rose despite my efforts to contain it. Rebecca, who had been silent until now, stood up awkwardly, her hand supporting her back. I had no idea about any of this, she said, her voice shaking. Nathan, did you know? Nathan hesitated just a fraction of a second too long. You knew. I whispered, the final betrayal landing like a knife to my heart. Not everything, he stammered. I knew Marcus was sending some money, but I didn't know how much or for how long. I thought it was just a few thousand that Marcus owed the family for expenses when you were pregnant. Not this. Mr. Winters cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, Mr. Williams has authorized me to present you with two options. First, you can repay the full amount plus interest, which comes to approximately $115,000 within 30 days. Alternatively, we can pursue criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement, in addition to a civil suit that would likely result in a judgment exceeding the original amount. Criminal charges? My mother's voice was barely audible. But we're family. Family doesn't steal from family, Lindsay said quietly. Especially not from a child. Aunt Judith stepped forward from where the relatives had been watching in stunned silence. Karen? Michael? How could you do this to your own daughter and granddaughter? Others joined in, their shocked comments creating a growing chorus of disapproval. The family that had so readily excluded us was now witnessing the ugly truth behind the perfect facade my parents had maintained for years. We needed the money, my father repeated, as if that justified everything. So did we. I finally shouted, years of suppressed anger breaking through. Do you have any idea what we went through? The nights I stayed up crying because I couldn't afford both rent and childcare? The scholarships I lost because I couldn't maintain a full course load while working? The birthdays when Lindsay got one small gift while you showered Nathan with presents? All while you had thousands of dollars that rightfully belonged to her. Nathan approached me, his expression pained. Heather, can we talk privately? I hesitated, then nodded. We stepped into the kitchen, away from the chaos in the living room. I swear I didn't know the full extent of this, he said immediately. I knew Dad helped me with tuition money that came from Marcus, but he told me it was just a few thousand that Marcus owed the family for expenses when you were pregnant. And you never questioned that? Never thought to ask me? I should have, he admitted. I was selfish. It was easier not to ask questions when things were going my way. He ran a hand through his hair. I've been thinking about everything. All the times they chose me over you. All the opportunities one got that you didn't. The money that should have gone to your niece. I finished for him. Yes, he looked me directly in the eyes. I want to make it right, Heather. I've talked to Rebecca, and we agree, whatever Mom and Dad can't pay back, we will. I hadn't expected this. That's not your responsibility, Nathan. Maybe not legally, but morally. I benefited from their favoritism my entire life. I got the college education that Lindsay's money helped pay for. I can't change the past, but I can try to fix this part of it. We talked for nearly 2 hours, really talked, perhaps for the first time as adults. Nathan admitted he'd always known our parents treated us differently, but had accepted it as normal because it benefited him. He confessed to feeling inadequate beside my achievements, which had made it easier to accept their preferential treatment as something he needed. I always thought you were the strong one, he said. You didn't seem to need their approval the way I did. I needed it just as much, I told him. I just stopped expecting it. When we parted, something had shifted between us. Not forgiveness exactly, the wound was too fresh for that, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The aftermath and new beginnings that evening, my parents showed up unannounced at our apartment. Lindsay answered the door and immediately called for me, her voice tight with tension. We need to talk, my father said when I appeared, without lawyers or audiences. I hesitated, then let them in, though Lindsay refused to leave my side. We've been thinking about everything, my mother began once we were seated in the living room. We made a terrible mistake. We never meant for it to go on so long. 16 years is more than a mistake, I said quietly. It's a choice. Multiple choices made every day for 16 years. We needed the money when it first started coming, my father explained. The economy was bad, my hours were cut, and Nathan needed braces. We told ourselves we'd pay it back. But then there was his college tuition and our mortgage, and my struggles didn't matter. I asked. The times I had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying Lindsay new shoes? The night classes I took while 8 months pregnant because I couldn't afford to take a semester off. We thought you were managing, my mother said weakly. Because I had to. My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. Not because it was easy. Not because we didn't need that money. Because I had no choice but to manage. My parents looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. My father cleared his throat. We've spoken to our financial advisor. We can liquidate some investments to repay about half the amount immediately. The rest, we'd need time. That's between you and Mr. Winters, I replied. I'm not involved in the legal aspects. And beyond the money, my mother asked hesitantly. Can we fix this? Can we be a family again? Lindsay spoke before I could. A family doesn't do what you did. A family doesn't steal from a child or exclude people from celebrations. A family doesn't consistently choose one member over another. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We love you both. We made terrible mistakes, but we love you. Love without respect isn't love, I said, finally articulating what I'd felt for years. Love without actions to back it up is just an empty word. They left with no resolution, no tearful reconciliation, no promises of a healed relationship. Just the beginning of a financial restitution that could never truly compensate for what had been taken from us, not just money, but belonging, security, and trust. The following week, I finally met with Marcus, the first time I'd seen him since he walked out 16 years ago. Lindsay had arranged the meeting at the same cafe where I'd met Nathan. Marcus had aged well, his youthful cockiness replaced by a quieter confidence. He was married now, with 2 young sons, and worked as an architectural engineer. I don't expect forgiveness, he said after an awkward greeting. What I did was unforgivable. Then why come back now? I asked. I've been in therapy for years, he explained, working through my issues, trying to become someone better than the boy who ran away from his responsibilities. When my first son was born, it hit me hard what I'd missed with Lindsay, what I'd taken from both of you. He showed me documentation of every payment he'd made over the years, copies of checks, bank statements, even emails from my parents acknowledging receipt. The systematic deception was laid out in black and white, impossible to deny. When I found Lindsay on social media, I just wanted to see her, he continued. I didn't expect a relationship, didn't think I deserved one. But she gave me a chance I hadn't earned. Lindsay, who had insisted on being present for this meeting, reached across the table and took his hand. Everyone deserves a second chance if they're truly sorry. I wasn't ready to offer such forgiveness, but seeing my daughter's capacity for grace moved me deeply. She had grown into someone stronger and wiser than I had been at her age, perhaps than I was even now. I want to be part of her life, Marcus said to me, and make up for what was taken from both of you. Not just the money, the time, the support, everything. That's not for me to decide anymore, I said, looking at Lindsay. She's old enough to choose what relationship she wants with you. As we left the cafe, I realized that while one family bond had been irrevocably broken, others were forming in its place. Fragile, but genuine connections based on truth rather than obligation. A new definition of family 6 months passed. Winter turned to spring, and with it came not just seasonal renewal, but personal transformation as well. The first payment from my parents arrived through Mr. Winters exactly 30 days after the confrontation, a check for $57,000, representing the liquidation of some of their investments as promised. The remaining balance would come in monthly installments over the next 2 years, with interest. Each check arrived promptly, though without any personal note or communication. I had chosen not to contact my parents during this time, needing space to process everything that had happened. Nathan and Rebecca's son, James Michael Davis, was born in February, a healthy 7-pound baby with a shock of dark hair like his father's. I learned of the birth not from my parents, but from Nathan, who called from the hospital to share the news. "We'd like you and Lindsay to come meet him," he said, his voice soft with new parent exhaustion and joy. "If you want to." We went the next day, bringing the crib mobile we'd chosen months ago and a small stuffed elephant for the baby. Rebecca welcomed us warmly from her hospital bed, the strain of our last meeting replaced by the glow of new motherhood. "He's beautiful," I said honestly, looking down at my nephew's tiny face. "Would you like to hold him?" Rebecca asked. As I cradled James in my arms, I felt no resentment, no lingering bitterness toward this innocent new life. Whatever complicated history existed between the adults, this child deserved a loving aunt and cousin in his life. "Mom's been calling," Nathan mentioned as we prepared to leave. "She wants to see the baby." "That's natural," I replied, careful to keep my tone neutral. "I told her she could visit next week after we're settled at home," he continued. "But I also told her things will be different now. No more favoritism, no more secrets. If she wants a relationship with James, she has to respect our boundaries." It was the first time I'd heard my brother stand up to our parents, and though it shouldn't have taken their disgrace to prompt this change, I was proud of him for making it. Marcus had become a regular presence in Lindsay's life, meeting her for lunch every other weekend, attending her debate competitions, and helping her research colleges. He'd offered to pay for her education in full, a gesture that meant more symbolically than financially, as the repayments from my parents would cover most of her tuition. "He's trying really hard," Lindsay told me after one of their outings. "Not just to be in my life, but to do it right. Not pushing too fast or overcompensating with gifts instead of time." I had met Marcus's wife, Diane, and their 2 boys, ages 4 and 6. She had known about Lindsay from the beginning of their relationship and had encouraged Marcus to reconnect with his daughter when he felt ready. The boys were excited to have a big sister, and Lindsay seemed to enjoy her role as the mature, admired older sibling. My own relationship with Marcus remained cordial but distant. Too much had happened, too many years lost for us to forge a close friendship. But I respected his efforts with Lindsay and the genuine change he seemed to have undergone. In April, I received an unexpected email from my mother. I almost deleted it unread, but decided that would be acting from the same place of avoidance that had characterized their behavior for years. "Dear Heather," it began, "your father, and I would like to see you and Lindsay. We understand if you're not ready, but we miss you both and would like the opportunity to apologize in person. We've been seeing a family therapist and working to understand our actions and their impact. Please consider meeting us. With love, Mom." I showed the email to Lindsay, leaving the decision to her. "What do you think? Should we meet them?" She considered it thoughtfully. "They haven't really changed, you know. One apology and a few therapy sessions don't undo a lifetime of behavior." "You're right," I agreed. "But people can grow, even later in life." "Like Dad did," she acknowledged. "But he put in years of work before reaching out to me. He didn't expect immediate forgiveness." In the end, we declined the meeting, not out of spite or inability to forgive, but because true reconciliation required more than words. It required demonstrated change over time. I drafted a response explaining this, suggesting that perhaps in the future, after more healing on both sides, we might reconsider. "Real relationships are built on respect and honesty," I wrote. "Those foundations need to be established before we can move forward." As spring turned to summer, Lindsay received acceptance letters from several prestigious universities. She ultimately chose Boston University, my alma mater, with plans to study pre-law. The money that should have supported her throughout childhood would now fund her education, a fitting, if belated, use of what had been taken from her. "I want to become the kind of lawyer who helps people stand up for themselves," she told me as we celebrated her decision, like Mr. Winters did for us. I looked at my daughter, this remarkable young woman who had found the courage to confront injustice when I had accepted it for too long, and felt a pride so profound it brought tears to my eyes. "You're already helping people stand up for themselves," I told her. "You helped me." Life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Nathan and Rebecca moved to a house closer to our apartment, making it easier for us to be part of James's life. Marcus's sons occasionally joined Lindsay's weekend visits, creating a blended family dynamic I never could have imagined. My parents continued to make their monthly payments, but respected our wish for distance. Occasionally, Nathan would mention them, that they were still in therapy, that they asked about us, but he never pressured us to reconnect. The most surprising change came from within me. The anger and hurt that had been my constant companions for so long gradually began to loosen their grip. Not because what had been done was forgivable, but because holding on to that pain no longer served me or Lindsay. I realized that true healing wasn't about reconciliation with those who had wronged us. It was about reclaiming our own worth, establishing healthy boundaries, and creating a life filled with genuine connections. 1 year after the confrontation at the baby shower, Lindsay and I hosted a graduation party at our apartment. Nathan and Rebecca came with baby James. Marcus attended with Diane and the boys. Friends from work and Lindsay's debate team filled our small living space with laughter and conversation. Noticeably absent were my parents, but their absence no longer defined us. We had created our own family, not bound by obligation or blood alone, but by choice, respect, and love. As I watched Lindsay, surrounded by people who truly celebrated her achievements, I realized we had both finally found what we had always deserved, a place where we unquestionably belonged. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who didn't treat you right? What helped you heal from family betrayal? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself and creating the family you deserve. Remember, sometimes the strongest family bonds aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we build with love and respect. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you all the strength to create the healthy relationships you deserve.